The evening grows quiet. The busyness of the day fades into stillness, and the soul begins to lean gently toward rest. This is the time to release every burden, to set aside every worry, and to draw near to the timeless stories that remind us of God's faithfulness. Among the many stories in Scripture, few are as enduring as the story of Noah's Ark. It is not only a tale of judgment upon a broken world. It is a story of hope, of renewal, of the promise that even in the darkest storms, God provides a way. As we begin this journey tonight, let your heart grow still. Imagine yourself resting in the calm embrace of evening. Your breathing slows. Your shoulders loosen, and your spirit opens to the quiet rhythm of this ancient story. The world we step into is very old. Generations before us lived upon the earth, and in their time, the world had strayed far from the goodness in which God created it. Violence filled the land. Selfishness and cruelty overshadowed compassion, and the earth groaned beneath the weight of corruption. Yet even in such darkness, light was not absent. For there was a man named Noah, a man who walked with God, whose heart was steady, whose life was marked not by perfection, but by faith. In the midst of chaos, he remained faithful. And through him, God would bring about a new beginning. The story of Noah is not only about a flood. It is about a promise. It is about the God who sees, the God who saves, the God who renews. It is about refuge in the storm, hope in the waiting, and peace in the promise fulfilled. As you listen tonight, let this story unfold slowly, like the steady rhythm of rain upon a roof, like the gentle rise and fall of the sea. Each part will guide you deeper into rest, while lifting your heart toward hope. For those who feel surrounded by storms, this story reminds that God provides an ark of safety. For those who wait in uncertainty, it speaks of patience, of trust in the one who holds time in his hands. For those who long for renewal, it whispers of the rainbow, a covenant that still stretches across the sky. So settle now. Picture yourself among the quiet fields of ancient days. The air is cool, the earth still beneath the stars. In the distance, a humble man tends to his work, unaware of how greatly his life will soon be used. His name is Noah. And through his faith, a new chapter in the story of humanity will begin. This is not a tale to rush through. It is a journey to rest in. The rise of the storm, the waiting within the ark, the calm after the flood, and the promise of a new world. All flow together in a rhythm that invites you to breathe more deeply, to rest more fully, to trust more gently in God's care. And so the journey begins. A story of hope, of renewal, of God's hand guiding even through the waters. A story that reminds us, even tonight, that in every storm there is refuge. And beyond every storm there is peace. Long before the first drops of rain fell, long before the ark was built, the world had already begun to change. God had created the earth in beauty. The sky stretched wide with stars, the seas full of life, the land rich with trees and rivers. Humanity had been formed in his image, crafted for love, for relationship, for peace. Yet over time, the people turned from him. Their hearts grew proud. Their desires became corrupted. Violence spread like a shadow across the earth. Where there should have been kindness, there was cruelty. Where there should have been peace, there was strife. Where there should have been worship of the Creator, there was disregard and selfishness. The scriptures tell us that God looked upon the earth, and he saw that every inclination of the human heart was only evil all the time. The beauty of creation was stained by sin. The harmony of the world had been broken. Imagine walking through that world. Villages filled with quarrels. Families torn by hatred. Neighbors striving against neighbors. The laughter of innocence had grown faint, drowned out by cries of selfish gain. The air itself seemed heavy with sorrow. And yet, amid the darkness, one man stood apart. Noah. Noah was not without flaw. He was human, with struggles and weaknesses like any other. But his heart was turned toward God. He walked with him faithfully. He listened when others ignored. He trusted when others doubted. He believed when others scoffed. While the world around him grew harder and colder, Noah's heart remained soft. And in that soft heart, God found room for his plan. God, in his justice, would not let evil reign unchecked forever. He would wash the earth clean, not to destroy for the sake of destruction, but to renew. To begin again. To bring forth life from the waters, just as he had in the beginning. And he chose Noah to be the vessel of that renewal. A man through whom hope would be preserved. A man through whom life would continue. The world before the flood was a place of contrast. Darkness and light. Corruption and faithfulness. Despair and hope. Most had turned from God, but Noah turned toward him. Imagine Noah walking through the streets of his village. He sees men boasting in violence. He sees children growing up in cruelty. He sees women weary under the weight of sorrow. And he feels the grief of God within his own heart. Yet he continues to walk faithfully. Step by step, day by day. The world before the flood reminds us of the cost of sin, but also of the beauty of faithfulness. Even when surrounded by darkness, Noah shone with quiet light. Even when others mocked, he remained steadfast. Even when the path was lonely, he continued. The story was about to shift. Soon Noah would hear God's voice with a command that seemed impossible. A task that would take years to fulfill. A calling that would make him the subject of ridicule. Yet through it all, his faith would remain. And so the stage is set. The world lies in corruption. The heart of God grieves. But one man stands ready to listen. And through him, the story of renewal will begin. The night grows deeper. The stars shine brighter. And Noah waits, not knowing yet what God will ask, but ready, by faith, to walk the path laid before him. The world lay heavy in sorrow. The hearts of men and women turned toward violence and selfishness. And the grief of God was deep. Yet in the midst of this darkness, a single life shone steady. Noah. A man who walked with God when others did not. A man whose faith set him apart in a time of corruption. And then came the moment that would change everything. The scriptures tell us that God spoke to Noah. His words carried both sorrow and hope. Grief for the earth that had fallen so far, and mercy for the future that would yet unfold. I am going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood, make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. Oi! Imagine Noah standing in or as these words reached him. The weight of judgment was clear. The world would be swept away. Yet within this command was also promise. There would be an ark, a place of refuge, a vessel of hope. God's call to Noah was not only a command to build, but a revelation of his mercy. While the earth would be washed clean, life would be preserved. Noah, his family, and the creatures of the earth would find safety within the ark. God gave Noah careful instructions. The ark was to be vast, strong, sealed against the waters. 3 decks high, with space for animals, food, and family. It would take years to build, a monumental task for one man and his household. Yet Noah did not question. He did not resist. He believed, and he obeyed. Faith often begins in the unseen. Noah had never witnessed a flood like the one God described. The skies above had not yet opened in such a way. Yet he trusted the voice of God more than the sight of his eyes. He set his heart to the work, even as others mocked. Imagine the villagers around him, watching as Noah began to gather wood. They must have laughed, ridiculed, called him foolish. An ark on dry land, for waters no one had seen. Yet Noah's resolve did not falter. His faith was not in men's approval, but in God's promise. The call of God to Noah was not simply about survival. It was about covenant. A relationship of trust between Creator and creation. Through Noah, God would preserve life. Through Noah, the story of humanity would continue. Think of the quiet strength it required. Each hammering blow of wood. Each step of gathering material. Each day of labor while others doubted. All were acts of faith. All were responses to God's call. And in Noah's obedience, we glimpse a truth that still comforts today. When storms rise, when the world feels uncertain, when doubt surrounds, God still calls his people to trust. He still provides a way of refuge. And faith, even when misunderstood, becomes the anchor that holds. Noah's call is our reminder. Obedience may seem costly, but it carries hope. Faith may seem foolish to the world, but it brings salvation. Trust may feel lonely, but it is never unnoticed by God. The world before him was filled with corruption. Yet the voice of God cut through the noise. And Noah, with quiet faith, began to walk the path of obedience. Step by step, plank by plank, year by year. The story was set into motion. The ark would rise upon dry ground. And soon, the storm would come. The night deepens. The stars glimmer softly. And the sound of distant rain begins to stir in imagination. For God has spoken. And Noah's journey of hope and renewal has begun. The call had been spoken. The task was clear. Noah was to build an ark. Not a small vessel, not a boat for fishing, but a great refuge that would carry life itself through the waters of judgment. God gave Noah exact instructions. The ark was to be made of cypress wood, strong and enduring. It would be coated with pitch inside and out, so no water could seep through its walls. It would be vast in size, 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, 30 cubits high. By today's measure, longer than a football field, tall as a great building. Within it, Noah was to make rooms, places for animals, places for food, places for his family to rest. The ark would rise like a wooden mountain upon dry land, a vessel of safety in a world soon to be covered in water. Imagine Noah standing before the task. The earth dry, the skies clear, and yet his hands already beginning the work. He cut the timber. He shaped the beams. He fastened the planks. Each strike of his tools rang like an act of faith. Day after day, year after year, the ark slowly took form. Villagers must have gathered to watch, shaking their heads, mocking his labor. Some may have laughed, calling him foolish. Others may have scorned, saying he wasted his life. Yet Noah continued. Steady, patient, unmoved. The ark itself became a testimony. Every beam spoke of obedience. Every plank whispered of trust. Every wall rising higher was a silent sermon to a world that had turned away. As the structure grew, it cast a shadow across the land. A reminder that judgment would come, but also that mercy was provided. For the ark was not built only for Noah. It was a vessel through which life would be preserved. Think of the care with which God designed it. Wide enough to carry the creatures of the earth. Tall enough to hold provisions for many days. Strong enough to endure storms the world had never seen. Sealed tight, safe within. Noah's hands worked, but God's wisdom guided every detail. For this was no ordinary vessel. It was a sanctuary of hope, crafted by obedience, designed by divine command. The ark's design reminds us of God's provision. He does not call his people without giving them what they need. He does not warn without also providing refuge. The ark was built long before the first drop of rain fell. Mercy prepared the way before judgment arrived. Imagine Noah's children helping, carrying wood, shaping beams. Imagine his wife preparing supplies, storing food, setting aside all they would need for the days to come. The family united in trust, their lives bound together by faith in God's word. The villagers, meanwhile, went about their lives, laughing, trading, feasting, unaware that soon the rains would fall. The ark rose among them as a silent witness, a wooden sermon calling them to see, to believe, to turn. Yet few listened. And still, Noah built. For faith does not depend on numbers. It depends on God's voice. The ark's design, so vast and strong, speaks even now, reminding us that when storms rise, God has already made a way. Reminding us that His care is detailed, precise, enough for every need. Reminding us that obedience, though mocked, builds the vessel of salvation. The structure stood firm upon dry land, a wooden mountain awaiting the waters, and within its walls, the promise of life rested. The night deepens. The stars above shimmer as if reflecting the pitch-dark ceiling of the ark. And the steady rhythm of building continues in the imagination. For the ark is rising. And soon, the animals will come. The ark rose higher with every passing season. Beams stacked upon beams. Planks joined together, sealed with pitch. A vessel unlike anything the world had ever seen. Noah worked steadily. His hands grew calloused, his body weary. Yet his heart remained firm. For though he had never seen a flood like the one God described, he trusted the word spoken to him. Around him, however, the world laughed. His neighbors mocked. Men scoffed at the sight of the massive structure taking shape on dry land. They could not imagine waters so high. They could not picture storms so fierce. And so they ridiculed the man who built in faith. "Why build such a thing, Noah?" they may have said. "Where is this flood you speak of? Oi! Why waste your strength on a dream that will never come? Oi!" But Noah's eyes were fixed beyond their doubt. His heart leaned not on their approval, but on God's voice. He knew that faith often looks foolish to those who do not see. He knew that trust sometimes requires building an ark under a clear sky. Imagine the patience it required. Year after year. Sunrise to sunset. The laughter of others in his ears. The weight of ridicule upon his shoulders. Yet with each hammer strike, each plank secured, his faith grew stronger. For every act of obedience was a declaration, "I believe in the God who speaks truth." His family must have felt the strain too. Perhaps his sons wondered what the world thought of them. Perhaps his wife heard whispers from the women of the village. Yet they too chose trust. They worked alongside him, bound together in faith. Their unity became their strength, their obedience their shield. Faith in the midst of doubt is never easy. It is walking forward when others stand still. It is trusting the unseen when the visible seems secure. It is building in silence when the world mocks loudly. Yet such faith pleases God. Proverbs reminds us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." Noah leaned not on his own understanding, nor on the approval of the crowd. He leaned on the word of God. And step by step, plank by plank, the ark took shape. Imagine Noah at the end of a long day. The sun setting, the sounds of mocking fading into the distance. He stands and looks upon the ark rising before him. His heart steady, his spirit at peace. For though the world doubts, he knows he has walked faithfully. The lesson of Noah's labor is timeless. Faith will always face doubt. Trust will always seem foolish to the proud. Yet the one who listens to God above the noise will endure. The storm may come, but the ark will stand. The ark itself became more than wood and pitch. It became the testimony of faith. Each beam a symbol of trust. Each wall a reminder of obedience. And though the world doubted, Noah's faith held firm. The days continued. The ark nearly complete. And soon, a new wonder would unfold. The gathering of the animals, drawn by God's own hand to enter the refuge prepared for them. The night grows deeper. The stars spread across the sky like countless promises. And in the stillness, faith whispers louder than doubt. The ark now stood complete. Its beams stretched long, its walls sealed tight. A great vessel upon dry land, waiting for the waters yet unseen. For years Noah had labored in faith. For years his family had joined him in obedience. And now, at last, the moment drew near when God's promise would begin to unfold. Then came a sight more wondrous than the rising of the ark itself. For God began to send the animals. The scriptures tell us that 2 by 2 they came. Every kind of bird, every kind of beast, every creeping thing upon the earth. Some large and mighty, others small and fragile. Each one drawn by the unseen hand of the Creator. Imagine standing with Noah's family as the first pairs appeared. Elephants moving with steady grace. Lions padding quietly. Gazelles leaping lightly over the grass. Birds flocking overhead, wings flashing in the sun. Even the smallest insects crawling along the earth, guided by the same divine call. The villagers who once mocked must have stood in awe. For no human hand gathered these creatures. No net, no trap, no cage brought them. They came of their own accord, drawn by the whisper of their Maker. Picture the scene. The ark towering upon the land. The sound of hooves, paws, and wings filling the air. A living procession of creation itself, moving toward refuge. Some came in pairs, others in sevens, as God commanded. The air was alive with sound, yet the order was perfect. Not chaos, but calm. Not fear, but peace. Imagine the children of Noah helping to guide them into their places. A son leading sheep to their pens. Another opening space for the birds. Noah's wife preparing food and water for the creatures. Each act of care a reflection of God's greater care. The sight must have been overwhelming. The strength of oxen. The wild beauty of deer. The quiet steps of rabbits and foxes. The flutter of sparrows and doves. Even serpents gliding silently, bees buzzing softly, every part of creation gathered under one roof. This was no ordinary migration. It was a miracle unfolding before human eyes. Creation obeyed where humanity had not. The animals came willingly, faithfully, instinctively, answering the call of their Creator, while men and women of Noah's world still refused to listen. The ark was no longer empty. It became a sanctuary. A small world within a world. A place where predator and prey rested side by side, held in peace by God's command. Noah must have felt the weight of awe as he watched. His years of labor now filled with purpose. Every beam built for this moment. Every plank sealed for these lives. The ark was ready, and the creatures of the earth were safe within its walls. Proverbs speaks of God's care for all creation. The eyes of all look to you, and you give them their food at the proper time. You open your hand and satisfy the desires of every living thing. Oi! The gathering of the animals was proof of that care. The same God who feeds the sparrow and clothes the fields also guided them to safety. Imagine yourself watching as the pairs moved quietly toward the ark. Each step a testimony of God's wisdom. Each wing beat a reminder of His sovereignty. Each creature a living sign that no part of His creation is forgotten. And then, as the last of the animals entered, the family of Noah prepared as well. They gathered their provisions, led their children inside, and took their place within the great vessel. The villagers still scoffed, some perhaps watching in uneasy silence. But Noah and his household obeyed, stepping into the ark that would become their refuge. And then came a moment both solemn and secure. For the scriptures tell us that it was the Lord Himself who shut them in. The ark was filled. The door sealed. The world outside unaware of the storm soon to come. But within, all was ready. Hope rested within wooden walls. And faith prepared for the journey through the waters. The ark now stood filled. Within its wooden walls rested a small world preserved. Lions lay in their pens, their golden eyes calm. Birds perched upon their roosts, their feathers soft against the dim light. Sheep and goats stirred gently, their quiet bleating echoing softly through the chambers. Even the smallest insects found their place, safe within God's design. Noah and his family had entered as well. Their arms weary from labor, their hearts steady in trust. For years they had prepared, gathering food, storing water, making ready for the journey. And now, at last, the time had come. The scriptures tell us that when all was ready, it was the Lord Himself who shut the door of the ark. Imagine the moment. Noah and his sons lowering the heavy ramp, pulling it into place. The vast door closing with creaks and groans of timber. And then, the final seal not by human hands, but by God's own. A divine closing, secure and certain. A mark that what was inside was safe, and what was outside was left to its fate. The shutting of the door was more than a practical act. It was a moment of covenant, of mercy and protection. It was God Himself declaring, "These are mine. These are safe. These will be carried through the storm." The villagers who once mocked must have fallen into uneasy silence. For the sight of the massive ark, now closed, must have stirred questions in their hearts. Yet still they did not enter. Still they clung to doubt. Still they turned away. Inside the ark, Noah and his family waited. The air was filled with the sounds of life. The rustle of animals, the soft voices of children, the steady breath of creatures at rest. The light grew dim as the great door sealed, and the world outside faded from view. The family must have exchanged glances, hearts both heavy and hopeful. Heavy, for they knew what was coming. Hopeful, for they trusted the God who had called them. The closing of the ark reminds us of God's protection. When storms rise, when judgment looms, when fear surrounds, His hand shuts us in. Not to trap us, but to keep us safe. The same hand that guides the sparrow also seals his children in peace. Proverbs whispers this truth: "The name of the Lord is a fortified tower, the righteous run to it and are safe." Oi! The ark was Noah's tower, his refuge, his place of safety. And within its walls, God's promise of renewal was preserved. Imagine yourself inside that ark. The wooden beams strong around you. The sound of rain not yet begun, but certain in the air. The knowledge that outside lies uncertainty, but inside rests peace. This is what it means to be shut in by God. The world outside continued in its noise, its laughter, its disbelief. But within the ark, faith waited quietly. Not in fear, but in trust. Not in despair, but in hope. And soon, the first drops of rain would fall. The door was sealed. The family safe. The creatures quiet. The ark ready. And in the stillness before the storm, a holy pause lingered. The calm before the heavens opened. The ark stood silent. Its great door sealed by the hand of God. Within, Noah and his family waited. Surrounded by the sounds of animals resting, children whispering, hearts beating steadily in faith. Outside, the world carried on as though nothing would change. And then, a drop fell. At first, it was small, almost unnoticed. A tiny bead of water slipping from the sky to the earth. Then another. And another. Soft taps upon leaves, light rhythms upon the ground. The people outside must have looked up in mild surprise. Rain was not unheard of, but this felt different. Heavier, steadier. The sky began to shift. Clouds thickened, darkening as if heaven itself carried a burden ready to break. The air grew heavy, the wind hushed, and the first drops multiplied. Inside the ark, Noah listened. The patter against the wooden roof began faint, like the whisper of a lullaby. Yet in its sound was the promise of something greater. The flood had begun. The villagers may have mocked still, at least in the first moments. "So this is your great flood, Noah," they may have called. "A little rain. Nothing more. Oi." Yet as the minutes passed, the rain grew stronger. Drops becoming streams, streams becoming sheets. The laughter began to falter. Imagine standing outside, feeling the cool drops at first refresh the skin, then soaking deeper. Clothes clinging, ground softening. Small puddles forming where the earth had been dry. Children looking up wide-eyed, mothers gathering their little ones. And still the rain came. From the windows of the ark, perhaps Noah's sons looked out in silence. They had prepared for this moment, yet seeing it unfold brought awe and trembling. The sky darkened further. The rhythm of rain upon the roof deepened into a steady drum. Inside, the animals stirred. Birds fluttered softly. Larger beasts shifted in their pens. A sense of change hung heavy. Not fear, but the weight of something new. The first drops of rain were the beginning of the great turning. The line between the old world and the new. For each drop was a reminder of God's justice, but also of His mercy. Judgment upon corruption, but refuge for those who trusted. Noah's heart must have been still, yet firm. He had waited for this moment for years, mocked by neighbors, doubted by the world. And now the heavens opened. And God's word proved true. The rain fell upon roof and ground, upon mountains and valleys, upon the righteous and the unrighteous alike. But only within the ark was there safety. Only within the walls sealed by God's hand was there refuge. Proverbs reminds us, when the storm has swept by, the wicked are gone, but the righteous stand firm forever. Oi! The first drops of rain whispered this truth. A storm was coming. But those who trusted in God's promise would endure. Imagine yourself within the ark now. The sound of rain surrounding you. Steady, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of heaven. You feel the vessel solid beneath your feet. You know the hand of God has sealed you in. And though the storm is outside, peace rests inside. The first drops grew heavier, louder. The ground began to soften. The streams began to swell. The air grew thick with the scent of rain. And the world outside shifted from disbelief to unease. And still, within the ark, faith waited quietly, surrounded by the steady sound of falling rain. The first drops had fallen. The skies had opened. And soon, the floodwaters would rise. The first drops had fallen. Soft, steady, like a whisper upon the earth. But soon the heavens opened fully. The rain no longer came as scattered beads. It poured in torrents, sheets of water falling without pause. The sound was deafening. A drumbeat from the sky that covered the land. Roofs dripped and then overflowed. Streams swelled into rivers. Rivers surged into floods. The once firm ground turned to mire beneath hurried feet. From the windows of the ark, Noah and his family looked out. The world they had known was vanishing beneath the waters. Familiar paths became streams. Marketplaces became pools. Laughter gave way to cries of alarm. The villagers who had mocked now ran in fear. Their voices rose above the storm at first, but were soon drowned by the roar of the heavens. They clutched their children, gathered their belongings, searched desperately for high ground. But the waters rose without ceasing. The fountains of the deep burst forth. The very earth seemed to split, releasing torrents from beneath. Heaven and earth joined in judgment, waters rising from below and above. The flood had begun in full. Inside the ark, however, there was peace. The sound of rain upon the roof was fierce, yet the walls held firm. The pitch-sealed beams stood strong. The creatures shifted but remained calm. The family prayed and trusted. Noah knew this was no ordinary storm. This was the fulfillment of God's word. For 40 days and 40 nights, the rain would not stop. And every living thing outside the ark would be swept away. Imagine the scene from within. Darkness pressing through the windows. The sound of rushing water filling every moment. The ark beginning to shift, to sway, lifted from the ground by the swelling flood. The world outside submerged. But within, safety endured. The people who had refused to believe now realized too late. The door of the ark was sealed. Not by Noah, but by God. And no strength of man could force it open. The flood was not only an ending. It was also a cleansing. God was not destroying for cruelty, but washing away corruption. Making way for renewal, for a new beginning. Even in judgment, mercy had been offered. An ark built, a refuge prepared. Proverbs whispers, "The fear of the Lord leads to life, then one rests content, untouched by trouble." Oi. Noah and his family rested in that truth. Though the waters rose, they were untouched by destruction. Imagine yourself inside the ark. The sound of rain heavy around you. The rocking of the vessel beneath your feet. The knowledge that the world outside is being washed away, yet you are safe within God's promise. This is the peace of trust. Not the absence of storm, but safety within it. The rain fell unceasingly. Day after day, night after night. The waters rose above the hills. They climbed the mountains. They swallowed the world until every high place was covered. And all living things outside the ark perished. But the ark floated. rising with the waters, carried by the hand of God. A wooden vessel adrift on endless seas, yet never lost. For the same one who commanded the flood also guided the ark. The great flood had begun. But within the ark, hope endured. The rains poured. The waters rose. The world outside faded. And the ark drifted safely upon the deep. The rains fell without ceasing. Day and night, the heavens poured, and the fountains of the deep gushed forth. The world outside vanished beneath rising waters. Hills were swallowed, valleys drowned, and voices faded into silence. Yet inside the ark, a different story unfolded. The great vessel rocked upon the waves, creaking softly as it rose higher with the waters. The wooden beams, sealed with pitch, groaned under the weight, yet held firm. Every plank was a testimony of obedience. Every joint a witness of faith. Within the ark, life continued in calm order. The animals settled into their places. Lions rested quietly in their dens. Oxen lay heavy upon the straw. Birds fluttered softly upon their perches. Even the smaller creatures, hidden in corners and crates, found rest within the ark's sanctuary. Noah and his family moved carefully through the chambers, feeding the animals, drawing water, bringing calm with gentle hands. Their days were filled with small acts of service, caring for each creature entrusted to them, tending to the needs of the living world preserved within these wooden walls. The air was alive with sounds. The lowing of cattle, the bleating of sheep, the calls of birds, the quiet stir of paws against the floor, and above it all, the steady drum of rain upon the roof. A rhythm that marked the passing of time. At night, when the family lay down to rest, the ark swayed gently upon the waters. The sound of rain became a lullaby. The rocking vessel a cradle of refuge. And though the world outside was swallowed in judgment, within was peace. Imagine Noah in the stillness of evening, sitting near a small lamp. His hands rough from years of building. His eyes weary from labor and care. Yet his heart steady, knowing that the God who called him had also shut him in. And the same hand that sealed the door would guide them through. His wife perhaps whispered prayers for their children, for the future that lay ahead when the waters receded, for the generations that would come after. Her heart heavy for those outside, yet hopeful for the mercy of God within. The children of Noah must have watched with awe. They had grown up hearing their father speak of God's promise. They had helped build the ark plank by plank. And now, as the vessel drifted upon endless waters, they saw with their own eyes that every word was true. The ark was not a place of luxury. It was crowded, noisy, filled with labor. Yet it was also a place of blessing. A place where the world's future rested in safety. A place where obedience had become salvation. The scriptures remind us, the Lord is good, a refuge in times of trouble. He cares for those who trust in him. The ark was proof of that truth. a wooden refuge in the storm, a shelter held by God's hand. Inside the ark, time seemed both slow and steady. Days passed with the rhythm of feeding, praying, waiting. The rain did not cease. The waters did not retreat. But faith endured. Imagine yourself inside the ark now. The scent of wood and straw. The flicker of lamps against the walls. The sound of animals breathing in sleep. And above it all, the steady rush of rain. You feel the vessel beneath you, strong and unshaken, carried by unseen currents. And in your heart, a quiet peace grows. For though storms rage outside, you are safe within. The ark became not only a shelter of survival, but a sanctuary of trust. It was the place where faith was tested and proven, where hope was preserved, where life itself rested in God's care. The world outside was gone, but within the ark, the promise remained. And so they waited. Day after day, night after night. The rains continued. The waters rose higher. And the ark floated gently upon the deep. The rain did not cease. It fell without pause, without end, a steady torrent from the heavens. For 40 days and 40 nights, the skies opened, and the earth was covered in water. Each day began with the same rhythm. The sound of rain against the ark's roof, the creaking of beams as the vessel swayed upon the swelling flood. Outside, the waters climbed higher and higher. Hills disappeared. Trees vanished. Mountains grew small beneath the rising tide. Noah and his family counted the days quietly, marking the passage of time not by the sun, hidden behind clouds, but by the unbroken rhythm of rain. Morning, afternoon, evening, all the same grey veil of sky, the same endless roar of water. Inside the ark, life continued in patient order. The family rose to tend to the creatures, feeding them, calming them, caring for their needs. The animals, once restless, grew accustomed to the rhythm. Lions lay quiet. Doves nestled peacefully. Sheep grazed from stored feed. The ark became a world of its own, preserved by obedience and sustained by God's hand. The labor was constant. Carrying food, cleaning pens, drawing water. The work did not cease, yet within it was peace. For though storms raged outside, the ark held firm. The waters could not breach the walls sealed by God's promise. At night, the family lay down to rest, the rocking of the ark gentle beneath them. The rain upon the roof was no longer frightening, but familiar. A lullaby of trust. For though the storm had not ended, they knew they were secure. Imagine the wait of 40 days. Not a week, not a fortnight, but long weeks stretching on. Each day the same storm, each night the same sound. And yet through it all, Noah's faith did not falter. He trusted that the God who called him would also deliver him. The scriptures say, "By faith Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark to save his family." By his faith he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith. His obedience through those long days was itself an act of worship. Outside, the world was silent. The laughter of neighbors gone. The markets and fields vanished. The only sound the endless flood. All that had been corrupted was washed away. The earth was being cleansed, renewed through the waters. Inside, however, was life preserved. The steady breath of animals. The quiet prayers of a family. The flicker of lamps casting warm light upon wooden walls. The ark floated, rising with the waters, yet never lost. Imagine yourself aboard that ark during the long weeks of rain. Each day begins the same. You hear the storm, yet you do not fear. You feel the rocking of the vessel, yet you trust its strength. You know that though you cannot see the horizon, the God who guides the waters holds you secure. The 40 days of rain were a test of endurance. But they were also a promise. For after the storm comes calm. After the cleansing comes renewal. After the waiting comes hope fulfilled. And so Noah and his family waited. The rains continued. The waters rose. But within the ark, faith endured, and life was preserved. At last, after 40 days and 40 nights, the rain ceased. The skies grew quiet. The roar of the storm faded into silence. And the ark drifted upon an endless sea. The rains had fallen for 40 days and 40 nights. Unbroken, relentless, covering every hill and mountain. And then, at last, the heavens grew quiet. The downpour ceased. The torrents stopped. The roar of water beating upon the ark's roof faded into silence. The skies above, once heavy with storm, stood still and grey. The winds calmed. The world, for the first time in many weeks, grew still. Inside the ark, Noah and his family felt the shift. The constant pounding that had filled their ears was gone. Replaced now by silence, broken only by the creak of timbers and the gentle breathing of animals. The vessel swayed slowly upon waters that stretched without end. Imagine opening a small window, peering out, and seeing nothing but water. No land, no tree, no mountain peak. Only endless waves reaching to the horizon. The whole world beneath the flood, the earth hidden under the great deep. The silence must have felt heavy at first. After so many days of storm, the stillness was almost startling. Yet within it was a strange peace. The storm had ended. And though the waters still covered the earth, the ark floated securely. The animals, too, felt the calm. The restless stirring of the storm passed into quiet rest. Birds nestled against their perches. Cattle lay down upon the straw. The great cats stretched in their pens, blinking slowly in the dim light. A hush settled upon creation. Noah must have breathed deeply, his heart lifting in gratitude. For though the floodwaters remained, the worst had passed. The rains had ceased, and the ark had endured. Every plank held, every beam stood firm. Not by Noah's strength alone, but by the hand of the one who designed and sustained it. The stillness after the storm was not the end, but the beginning of waiting. For the waters were deep, the earth still hidden. Yet within the quiet, there was hope. Hope that the same God who had shut them in would also bring them out. Hope that renewal was nearer than it seemed. Proverbs speaks gently to this truth. When the storm has swept by, the wicked are gone, but the righteous stand firm forever. The storm had swept away all else, but within the ark, the righteous endured. Preserved by faith, sustained by mercy. Imagine yourself upon that ark in the days after the rain ceased. You walk along the wooden deck, feeling the vessel sway gently with the waters. You hear the quiet around you, no longer the roar of the storm, but the stillness of peace. You know that though you see only waves, God's promise still holds. The silence is not emptiness, but assurance. For sometimes, the calm after a storm feels uncertain. The world outside has changed. The horizon looks different. The familiar is gone. Yet even there, peace can be found. For God is present not only in the rain, but in the stillness that follows. The ark drifted quietly across the endless waters. Days passed, then weeks. The world waited beneath the flood. But above it all, God remembered Noah. The rains had ceased. The stillness had come. And now the ark floated in quiet trust upon a sea without shore. The storm had ended. The skies grew silent. The rain no longer poured. And yet, the waters remained. The ark floated upon an endless sea. No hills broke the horizon. No trees rose above the waves. No villages or fields remained. Only water stretching as far as the eye could see. The world had been washed clean. The vessel rocked gently, held steady by the hand of God. The same God who had spoken to Noah. The same God who had designed its every detail. The same God who had sealed its door. Now carried it upon the deep. Inside, Noah and his family lived in quiet rhythm. Each day marked by caring for the animals, feeding them, drawing water, calming the restless. Each night marked by prayer and trust. Their world was small, but their hope was large. For though they saw no land, they believed in the promise. Imagine the vast silence of those days. The sound of waves lapping against wood. The creak of beams swaying with the water. The calls of animals echoing softly in the dim light. No thunder, no storm, only the wide quiet of endless water. The ark became a floating sanctuary. A place of waiting, of endurance, of trust. It was not only a vessel of survival, but a vessel of faith. Within its walls, life continued while outside, the earth lay hidden beneath the deep. Noah must have looked often from the window, scanning the horizon, seeing only water, but remembering God's promise. Each wave reminded him of judgment, yet each breath reminded him of mercy. For in the ark, life endured. His sons worked beside him, carrying food, tending to creatures. Their wives prepared meals, brought care to the small ones, offered comfort in the waiting. His wife prayed quietly, her faith steady, her heart leaning into God's presence. Together they endured, a family bound by obedience. The scriptures say, "But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded." The drifting of the ark was not forgotten. God's eye was upon them every moment, guiding the vessel, watching the family, holding creation in his care. Imagine yourself aboard the ark as it drifts upon the vast waters. You stand near the small window, looking out across the horizon. Nothing but waves meet your gaze, yet you feel no fear. The rocking of the ark steadies your steps. The silence of the sea calms your heart. You know that though you see no land, God sees you. The ark upon the waters reminds us of our own seasons of waiting. When storms have passed but answers have not yet come. When the horizon looks empty, yet God's promise remains. When we drift not in despair, but in trust, knowing He remembers us. Day after day, week after week, the ark floated. The waters did not recede quickly. The earth remained hidden. Yet the vessel held firm, carried by unseen currents, guided by unseen hands. And then, one day, the ark touched something solid beneath the waves. The drifting had ended. The waiting was changing. The ark had come to rest upon the mountains of Ararat. The ark had drifted for many days, carried by unseen currents across a world without landmarks. Above stretched a quiet sky, below lay endless waters. Yet the vessel did not wander aimlessly. For the God who had spoken to Noah, the God who had sealed the door, the God who remembered his servant, was guiding it gently toward its appointed place. And then, one day, the long journey shifted. The ark came to rest. Not upon a valley, not upon the low plains, but upon the mountains of Ararat. Imagine the moment. The gentle rocking of the vessel slowed. The sound of waves against its sides grew softer. And beneath, a firmness was felt. The ark had found a resting place, secure upon the heights. From the small window, Noah may have looked out and seen peaks rising faintly above the waters. Jagged ridges piercing the sky. Still surrounded by seas, yet standing firm as the first signs of the earth returning. It was not yet time to leave, but hope stirred. For the ark had touched land. Inside, the animals stirred with quiet awareness. The lions lifted their heads. The cattle shifted upon the straw. The birds flapped softly, as though sensing that the journey was turning. Creation itself seemed to breathe differently, as if the waiting would soon give way to renewal. Noah must have felt a deep gratitude. For months they had floated upon the waters, with no direction but faith. no horizon but trust. And now, the ark stood still upon the mountain, secure and steady. God had not forgotten. His hand had brought them to rest. The mountain resting place speaks of God's timing. The waters did not recede in a moment. The earth was not ready at once. Yet step by step, stage by stage, the plan unfolded. Patience was still required, but progress was clear. Proverbs whispers this truth: the Lord directs the steps of the righteous. Even upon the waters, even in the drifting, even in the waiting, God was leading Noah. And the resting of the ark was proof. Imagine yourself in that place. You have waited long through storm and silence. You have wondered if the horizon would ever change. And then one day, the vessel beneath you steadies. You feel the firmness of foundation. You sense that God has brought you to a resting place. It may not yet be the end of waiting, but it is a sign of His faithfulness. The ark stood upon Ararat like a promise fulfilled. A silent testimony that God carries His people safely to where they need to be. Even when the waters are high. Even when the horizon is empty. His hand is steady. His purpose sure. Noah and his family continued their daily rhythms. Feeding the animals. Tending to needs. Waiting patiently. Yet their prayers now carried a deeper hope. For they knew that the time of release would come. The earth was being renewed, and soon they would step again upon dry land. The mountains rose around them, silent witnesses of God's mercy. Once hidden beneath the waters, now revealed as signs of stability. The ark's resting place upon their slopes was more than coincidence. It was providence. The family must have gathered together in quiet thanks. The animals lay calm. And above, the sky stretched clear, the storm long gone. The ark had rested. And with it, the hearts of Noah and his household rested too. For God had brought them safely to the heights. But Noah's waiting was not over. Soon he would begin to search for signs of life. Sending first a raven, then a dove, to look beyond the waters. The ark rested quietly upon the slopes of Ararat. Its beams creaked less with each day. The waters still covered the valleys below, but the vessel no longer drifted aimlessly. It had found stability, held securely by God's hand. Inside, life continued in its slow, steady rhythm. The family cared for the animals. They prayed. They waited. And though patience was their daily companion, Noah longed to see if the earth was drying. If signs of life were returning. If the day of release was drawing near. And so, he opened the small window of the ark. He chose first the raven, a bird strong and unyielding, built for endurance. He held it gently, lifted it to the light, and released it into the open sky. Imagine the moment. The dark wings beat against the wind, rising above the ark. The raven circled wide, its cry echoing across the still waters. It soared over peaks, skimmed the waves, vanished into the horizon. Noah and his family watched, waiting. Would it return with news of dry ground? Would it bring hope in its wings? The scriptures tell us that the raven flew back and forth until the waters dried up from the earth. It found no true resting place, for the ground was not yet ready. The raven became a symbol of searching, a restless flight between what was and what would be. It could not yet bring the assurance Noah longed for, but it reminded him that the process had begun, that the waters, though still vast, were receding. Inside the ark, Noah waited with patience. He did not rush. He did not force open the door. He trusted the unfolding of God's time. The raven's restless circling was only the beginning, another sign that the story was moving forward. Imagine the lessons in that waiting. Sometimes, the answers we seek do not come at once. Sometimes, what we send forth into the unknown returns without clarity. Yet even then, faith calls us to wait, to trust that God is still working, even when the horizon looks the same. Proverbs whispers, "A man's steps are directed by the Lord. How then can anyone understand his own way?" Noah could not see the full plan. He could only release, watch, and wait, knowing that the one who guided the raven also guided the flood's retreat. Picture Noah's family standing near the window, their faces turned upward. They listen to the distant call of the raven. They watch its dark figure move against the grey sky. And though it does not bring an olive branch or a sign of land, it brings confirmation. The waters are not endless. The waiting is not forever. The ark remained secure upon the mountain. The family remained patient within its walls. And Noah knew that another attempt would be made. A gentler bird, a dove, would soon be sent. And with it, the promise of peace would draw nearer. The raven's flight was the first search, a restless messenger of endurance, a sign that the flood was passing, though the earth was not yet ready. The raven had flown into the wide grey sky, circling, searching, yet never bringing back the assurance Noah longed for. It was a restless messenger, moving back and forth until the waters receded. But Noah's heart remained patient, for he knew that God's time was steady, and renewal would come at the right moment. And so, after more days of waiting, Noah chose another bird. This time, a dove. The dove was different. Gentle, pure, a symbol of peace. Where the raven embodied endurance, the dove carried hope. Noah held the small bird carefully in his hands. Its feathers soft, its eyes calm. He brought it to the open window of the ark and released it into the sky. Imagine the sight. The dove's white wings beating against the air, rising, circling, gliding across the waters, searching for a place to land. Its form grew small against the vast horizon of waves. Noah and his family watched with quiet anticipation, their eyes fixed upon the sky. The scriptures tell us that the dove found no resting place, for the waters still covered the earth. And so it returned to the ark, its wings weary, seeking refuge once more. Noah reached out his hand and brought the bird back inside, cradling it gently, returning it to safety. The family must have sighed softly. Perhaps disappointment flickered in their hearts, but alongside it was patience. The dove's return was not failure, but a reminder. The world was not yet ready. Renewal takes time. After waiting 7 more days, Noah released the dove again. Once more its wings carried it into the sky. Once more it disappeared beyond the horizon. The family waited, hearts steady, breaths held in hope. And then it returned. This time, its wings carried more than flight. In its beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. Green, tender, alive. Imagine the joy within the ark at that moment. A single leaf, yet filled with promise. The waters were receding. The land was returning. Life was sprouting anew. The long waiting was not in vain. God's renewal was unfolding. Noah must have held the leaf in his hand, his heart swelling with gratitude. He had waited through storms, through silence, through endless days of drifting. And now, in this small sign, he saw the faithfulness of God. The family rejoiced quietly. Their prayers lifted in thanksgiving. The animals stirred as if sensing the shift. Even within the wooden walls, hope blossomed like the green of the olive leaf. The dove became a symbol forever. A sign of peace, of promise, of God's covenant to bring renewal after judgment. It carried in its beak not just a leaf, but the assurance that life would continue. That the earth would not remain under water forever. That God's mercy endures. Proverbs reminds us, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. Oi! That single olive leaf was a tree of life in miniature. A longing fulfilled after long waiting. A whisper that the end of their journey was drawing near. Imagine yourself within the ark, watching the dove return. You see the small flash of white wings against the sky. You notice the tiny green leaf held gently in its beak. You feel your heart lift with relief. For the waiting is not forever. The waters are receding. Renewal is near. Noah waited again 7 more days. And when he sent the dove out once more, it did not return. For the earth was drying. And the time of release was approaching. The dove's return with an olive leaf was more than a sign of land. It was a promise of peace. And the assurance that God's covenant of renewal would stand forever. The olive leaf had brought hope. A tender green sign held gently in the beak of a dove. A promise that the waters were receding, that life was stirring again upon the earth. Noah and his family rejoiced quietly within the ark. Their hearts lifted, their spirits strengthened. Yet still, they waited. 7 more days passed. days of feeding animals, of tending to daily needs, of praying in trust, of looking often toward the horizon with longing. They knew the waters were retreating, but patience was still required. For the earth needed time to dry, for renewal is never rushed. And then, when the week had ended, Noah once more opened the small window. He held the dove again, its feathers soft against his hand, its eyes bright with calm. He lifted it into the light and released it into the sky. Imagine the wings unfolding, the bird rising high, gliding across the vast expanse of water, circling, searching, soaring farther than before. The family watched silently, their eyes following the white figure until it was only a speck against the horizon. Hours passed. The ark rocked gently upon the waters. The animals shifted in their pens. The family waited. Evening came, and the dove did not return. The scriptures tell us that the dove found rest upon the earth, for the waters had receded enough to uncover dry ground. It did not need to return to the ark, for the world was becoming livable again. Noah must have stood quietly at the window, his heart full. The absence of the dove was not loss. It was assurance. The world outside, once drowned in silence, now whispered of renewal. The mountains, valleys, and fields were slowly emerging. The ark's season of waiting was nearly done. Inside, the family must have shared glances of relief. A smile from Shem. A quiet breath from Ham. The eyes of Japheth widening in wonder. Noah's wife and daughters-in-law lifting prayers of thanks. Each heart stirred with gratitude. The end was near. The dove's silence, its choice not to return, was itself a message. Sometimes, absence speaks louder than presence. Its not returning was proof enough that God had prepared the earth again for life. Proverbs reflects this truth. There is surely a future hope for you, and your hope will not be cut off. For Noah, the dove's absence was that very hope fulfilled. A future waiting just beyond the ark's walls. Imagine yourself within that wooden vessel in those final days. You hear no bird wings returning. You see no flash of white at the window. And yet, you feel no sorrow. For you know the silence is good. It means the waiting is ending. It means the promise is unfolding. It means God's renewal is at hand. The ark still rested upon Ararat. The waters still covered much of the land. Yet each day, the sun rose a little higher. The earth grew a little drier. And hope grew stronger. The dove did not return. And in its absence, peace filled the ark. For it was not only the end of the bird's journey. It was the beginning of theirs. Soon, Noah and his family would step out into a cleansed world. A new chapter of humanity was about to begin. The silence of the dove was not emptiness. It was promise. It was the final sign that the time of release was drawing near. The dove had not returned. Its absence spoke more clearly than words. The earth, once drowned beneath the deep, was now readying itself for life again. The waters had receded. The soil was drying. The world was being renewed. Inside the ark, Noah and his family waited with patience. They did not rush. They did not push open the great door before its time. For they knew that the same God who had shut them in would also call them out. And then the moment came. The scriptures tell us that after many months upon the waters, God spoke to Noah again. His voice, steady and merciful, broke the long silence of waiting. "Come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of living creature that is with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground, so they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number on it." Oi! Noah's heart must have swelled at those words. The long season of confinement was over. The time of renewal had begun. Imagine the scene as the great door of the ark was opened. Sunlight, after so many months dimmed by wooden walls, streamed inside. The fresh scent of earth and air replaced the close atmosphere of straw and wood. The sounds of wind and rustling leaves touched their ears after silence so long. One by one, the animals began to emerge. Birds took to the air in bursts of color and song. Deer stepped lightly onto the grass. Lions stretched, their golden manes glinting in the light. Rabbits hopped softly, foxes darted quickly, cattle moved steadily in groups. Creation flowed out of the ark like a river of life. Imagine the sight. Pairs of every kind of animal spilling across the mountainside, finding new homes in valleys and forests. Their voices filling the air, their presence marking the renewal of the earth. The silence of the flood was broken by the chorus of life. Noah and his family stepped out as well. Their feet touched dry ground for the first time in many months. The earth beneath them felt steady, solid, real. The sky above stretched wide and blue. The storm was long past. The world was made new. Their hearts must have lifted in awe. For all that had been washed away, God had preserved them. For all that was lost, new life was beginning. They had lived through judgment, and now they walked into renewal. Proverbs reminds us, "The righteous will never be uprooted, but the wicked will not remain in the land." Oi! Noah's family, righteous in faith, now stood upon an earth cleansed and renewed. Imagine yourself stepping out of that ark. You feel the sun upon your face. You breathe the clean air, scented with earth and grass. You hear the birds sing, the animals call, the wind whisper across the mountains. Every sense filled with renewal, every breath a reminder that God is faithful. The ark, once their refuge, had served its purpose. Now the open earth became their dwelling. And the God who guided them into safety now guided them into new beginnings. Noah and his family gathered together in gratitude. Their eyes wide at the sight of the cleansed world. Their hearts bowed in worship. For they knew that this was more than survival. This was salvation. The ark had opened. The earth was renewed. And soon, God would speak again, sealing his promise with a covenant that stretched across the sky. The ark had opened. Life poured forth upon the earth once more. The air rang with the cries of animals, the songs of birds, the quiet rustle of creatures filling valleys and hills. The silence of the flood was broken by the sound of renewal. Noah and his family stood upon dry ground, their feet steady after long months adrift. Their eyes lifted toward the horizon, wide with awe. For the world before them was cleansed, fresh, ready for new beginnings. And then, Noah built an altar. The scriptures tell us that the very first act after leaving the ark was not to build a house, not to plant fields, not to settle the land, but to worship. He took of the clean animals and birds, and offered them upon the altar as a sacrifice of gratitude. Imagine the fire rising into the sky, smoke curling upward like a prayer, the fragrance of thanksgiving filling the air. Noah's heart bowed low before the one who had carried them through storm and silence. His worship was not only for deliverance from death, but for the gift of new life. The Lord received Noah's sacrifice with favor. And in that moment, he spoke words of covenant. Words that would echo across generations. Never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood. And never again will I destroy all living creatures, as I have done. God made a promise. A covenant not only with Noah, but with all creation. The earth would continue. Seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night would never cease. And then he set a sign in the sky. A bow of colors stretching across the heavens. A rainbow, arching like a bridge between earth and heaven. Imagine Noah and his family gazing upward. The air still damp from the flood. The clouds parting. The light of the sun breaking through drops of water. And there, across the sky, a rainbow shining in brilliance. Each color glimmered with promise. Red for mercy. Gold for faithfulness. Blue for peace. Green for life renewed. It was not only beauty, but covenant. God's eternal reminder that never again would the waters cover the earth in judgment. The rainbow became a seal. A promise written in light. A symbol that whenever clouds gather, hope remains. Whenever storms rise, mercy is near. Whenever hearts fear destruction, God's covenant endures. Noah must have felt peace settle upon him. For though the flood had cleansed the earth, it could not cleanse the human heart. Sin remained, weakness endured. Yet God's promise was not built upon human perfection. It was built upon His mercy. Proverbs reflects this truth. The Lord's unfailing love surrounds the one who trusts in Him. The rainbow was a picture of that unfailing love. Encircling creation, surrounding humanity, binding heaven and earth together in covenant. Imagine yourself standing with Noah at that moment. You look to the sky and see the arc of colors glowing against the clouds. You feel the warmth of the sun upon your face. You know that though storms may come again, they will never consume. For God has promised mercy, and His word does not fail. The covenant with Noah is not only history. It is a story that still speaks today. Every rainbow in the sky is a whisper of God's faithfulness. A reminder that destruction is not His final word. Renewal is. Noah and his family must have bowed in awe. Their altar smoking behind them. Their eyes lifted to the bow above them. Their hearts secure in the God who promises and keeps His word. The covenant stood. The rainbow glowed. And the earth began again. The flood had ended. The promise had been sealed. And the story of humanity moved forward, grounded not in fear, but in mercy. The rainbow stretched across the sky. A covenant of light painted by the hand of God. Its colors glimmered above the cleansed earth, a sign of mercy and faithfulness. Never again would the waters cover the whole earth. Never again would creation be undone by flood. Noah and his family stood in awe. Their altar still smoldering with sacrifice, their eyes lifted to the heavens. The storm was gone, the silence of judgment past. And before them lay a new world. The earth itself seemed to breathe anew. Rivers flowed fresh between the hills. Trees, once buried beneath the waters, stretched upward in life again. Birds filled the skies with song. Animals spread across valleys and plains, their voices rising in chorus. What had been desolate was now vibrant with promise. For Noah and his household, this was more than survival. It was a beginning. A renewal of life, a new chapter for humanity. They had entered the ark with uncertainty, but they left it with covenant. They had endured the storm, but now they walked in peace. Imagine Noah looking upon his children. Their faces lit by sunlight, their eyes wide with wonder. He knew that through them, nations would rise. Families would fill the earth. The world would grow again, rooted in the faithfulness of God. The ark itself, once their refuge, now rested quietly upon the mountain. Its work was complete. It had carried them safely through the waters, but it was never meant to be their final dwelling. It was a vessel for a season, a shelter until the promise unfolded. So it is with all the arks God provides. They carry us through storms. They hold us in times of trial. But they are not the destination. They are the bridge to renewal, the passage to hope. The covenant of the rainbow is still alive. Even now, when clouds gather and storms threaten, the arc of colors appears, whispering the same promise. That mercy triumphs over judgment. That God's love endures beyond wrath. That hope shines even after the darkest storms. Proverbs reminds us, the path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter till the full light of day. Noah's journey was the path of the righteous. a steady walk of faith through darkness, into light. And now, the morning sun rose upon a new creation. Imagine yourself standing upon that mountain with Noah. You feel the firm ground beneath your feet after long drifting. You breathe the fresh air, free of the heavy storm. You look to the sky and see the rainbow stretching wide. And in your heart, peace settles. For you know that the God who carried Noah carries you. The God who remembered Noah remembers you. The God who renewed the earth is able to renew your soul. The story of Noah's Ark is not only about judgment. It is about hope. It is about renewal. It is about the God who provides refuge in the storm, guidance in the waiting, and promise after the flood. As the rainbow fades into the quiet sky, one truth remains. God's covenant endures. His mercy is everlasting. His promise of renewal is certain. And so the story rests. The ark complete, the earth renewed, the covenant sealed. A journey of hope, of trust, of faith. Reminding all who hear it that storms do not last forever. Waters do not cover without end. And in every season, God provides a way. And as night falls once more, hearts can rest in this truth. The same God who brought Noah through the flood is the same God who brings you through every storm. And beyond every storm, there is always renewal.